And I'm David. And it's another crazy week
How
of
do
Survivor.
these tribals go?
What is going on? Yes.
Right?
But first,
Okay.
we're dealing with, the fallout from the last tribal, and Davey's very celebratory.
Oh, Davey's so excited.
Yes.
He's so cute.
And he feels like he was wrestling in that tribal, and he's got John's jacket. I'm just hoping he gives the jacket to Angelina, because she needs it.
Yes, give whoever needs jackets.
Right. But then the Goliaths are sort of like reassessing, the state of their game, and they're discussing their next moves, but they're kind of leaving Dan out of it. And he's just like deep in thought on the beach by himself.
Well, as we've mentioned, Dan thinks he's on Bachelor. And so when he sees his girl over there just plotting and talking and whatever,
Hurts.
I mean, he did just get his best buddy out.
True.
Or he didn't get him out,
He
but
got
like he
blindsided.
lost his
Yeah.
best buddy. And so you're going to be a little down about that. And
Sure.
then your girl's not there.
Yeah.
She's over there.
Right, yeah.
And he's not included.
Uh-huh.
So instead of going over to join the group,
Right,
he
he
sulks
just pouts.
on the beach.
Yeah. So then she goes over and is trying to do a little bit of damage control with him, like, what's
what's
going
going on?
on?
Yeah.
And he just kind of lays into her a little bit, and she's like, you can't just sit here by yourself. Like, why don't you come over? You saw us talking over there. This is Survivor. You have to, be talking to people and moving around.
Right.
So then Kara's like, I gotta cut ties with this guy.
Yes.
This is not working.
Yes, she's a bit concerned.
Mm-hmm.
We go to reward.
Yes, and they get to play for burgers and beer, and Carl is so excited.
Carl loves that beer.
He loves beer, but he's the one guy who doesn't get to play
He
for
doesn't
reward.
get to play.
Now,
so
I
he
thought-
definitely doesn't get beer.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be looking around on that bench for an advantage. Maybe there was nothing there,
But the camera started to zoom in for just a second, and then they cut away. And
Yeah.
I feel like had he found it, there was probably something
Yeah.
they were zooming into, but
Yeah.
they didn't expand on that. So I
Right.
guess nothing to be found.
Yeah, but it was pretty close the whole time. Between
sure
one
was.
team had a very clear physical advantage. It was like Dan and Alec and Davey
Yeah.
and all these really physical guys. But it's close up until the puzzle.
Right, and it comes down to a puzzle. So you're like, well, now who cares about physical advantage?
Yeah.
But that team still wins.
Right,
Reward.
Kara and Alec won over Allison
Yes.
and Christian, which is kind of a
Yes.
surprise puzzle-wise.
Yeah.
Because you think Allison and Christian are these puzzle
They were
masters.
slightly
but-
behind them,
yeah.
so maybe that
Yeah.
time made the difference.
Right.
The puzzle masters don't get to win reward.
Yes.
And off we go. But back at camp,
Uh-huh.
Gabby is like, well, here's my opportunity
Yes.
to get back in with Allison.
Yeah.
They had sort of formed a bond
Absolutely.
earlier. Now we have time together during
Right,
reward while
right.
the other team's off at reward.
And Gabby's thinking, I need to get Dan out, so let me go to work on Allison. Because they realize,
I
we're-
think they had talked exactly that before, right? Wasn't Dan the conversation before?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Allison had earlier made the comment about, it's not if I blindside Dan, it's
Yeah.
when. So she
Right.
sort of seemed willing to do that at some point, and Gabby wants it to be this week. And I think the Davids are realizing, we're so close to being even, we just, need to pull over a Goliath and, help us get in another Goliath, and
Right.
then we're good.
Right.
So she's going to work on that, and Allison sort of seems receptive to it at first because
Yeah.
she's been talking to other Goliaths saying, look, I've been promising some Davids that I'm going to make a move with them, but I haven't for 2 weeks. Now I need to. It's week 3, I gotta,
When is the time?
Yeah.
And Dan, she's comfortable with getting out.
yeah,
She's
he's a threat for sure.
at reward.
Uh-huh.
Oddly enough, we see Davey walk off by himself.
Yeah.
And maybe he was there a lot more than
Right,
they
than they
showed. But you're just like, I get it, Davey. You don't really care about hanging out
Right.
with the Goliaths. But
Right.
why give them any time to talk?
Because who knows if they're talking about you? You gotta stick around and, be a part of the conversation and,
Yeah.
know what people are chatting about.
So while he's gone, they take the opportunity
Yeah.
to be like, Goliath strong.
Absolutely, and Mike is still on that Christian
Yes,
plan.
yes.
He is stuck on that, which
Let's-
I'm not happy about.
Right, let's
Yeah.
get back to Christian.
Right.
Gotta get Christian out.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, sure, sure, sure.
Yeah. So then, Kara now, as we saw earlier in the episode, she's not too thrilled with Dan, and she's still kind of set on getting him out at this point. And she reveals his second idol to Allison and Alec.
Ah, we both screamed at this
We're
point.
like, whoa, okay.
Okay, first off, I thought she was just like, I don't need to be so aligned with
Right,
Dan.
right. Let me just put some distance.
No, she's like, let me blow up his game
Yes, and get him out.
and blindside him.
Yeah.
She tells them about his idol. Hello,
Right, right.
whoa.
Mhm.
And then she's like, so he's the next one, let's blindside him. And Alec and Allison are like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, we're ready. Okay. That was quick. That was a quick turn on Kara's
I didn't
part.
see that coming. I did not see Kara going there.
Right.
Now we see, like, early morning, before people sort of wake up.
Right.
The Davids creep out.
Around.
And as a group,
Looking
I
for
love
things.
that they did it as a group.
Yes.
And Davey was explaining to us, like, we have to do whatever we can.
Right.
We know there's a new idol on the beach.
Yeah.
Let the Davids get it.
Uh-huh.
And they did. They searched around. They were
looking. But Christian points out that once breakfast time comes around, Carl and Davey are kind of giving up. And they don't want to be too obvious that they're looking for an idol. But he is not finished with his robotic search. He's separating the island into sectors and doing some way of searching that's like you look a little in a lot of places and then a lot in a few places. And I don't know.
Doesn't want to spend too much time in one place, so he maps it out. And this, I mean, hey.
It was a great segment.
Whatever works for you, buddy. Yeah. And we love to just listen to him like, what are you
Blather
saying?
on about whatever.
Yes.
And then finally,
it paid off.
Well, blue yarn is not native to the jungles of Fiji, so he finds this idol, and of course I'm thrilled because now he's safe, right?
And then he's like, and I'll let the Davids know, and we were like, no!
Right.
But kind of at this point, like, he owes the Davids.
Yeah.
An idol was used for him.
Right.
And, you know, the Davids kind of need to work together. So I was like, okay, fine. Now we go to immunity. So armed with, I guess, the desire to get Dan out, it seemed like Alec was really gunning for this immunity.
Right. He was like leaping over this thing that you're supposed to high step over, like going. And Dan is still in the lead. Like, Dan is in the lead for most of this immunity, but it's neck and neck between the two of them.
Yeah.
But like, they're blowing the rest of the tribe out of the water. Like, the two of them are so far ahead. And it sort of comes down to this like equalize, like this curvy thing that we've kind of seen it on Big Brother before, that kind of a challenge, and that kind of like levels the playing field. And Alec manages to eke out a win.
It's just easy to drop the ball, and so Dan's dropped a few. Some other people are sort of catching up. The first ball to get in is real easy. But yeah, Alex sort of powers through and gets that third ball, wins immunity. And I was just like, he was out like gangbusters from the get-go.
Right. And I thought, like you said, I thought it was like, he is on a mission to beat Dan and make sure that Dan doesn't have that immunity necklace. Not just to save himself, but to prevent Dan from having it at Tribal Council. That's what I thought.
Right. I mean, honestly, Dan is going to win some of these. As long as he's still there, he is going to win.
Yeah. So we've got our third individual winning individual immunity, which is great. We're spreading out the individual immunity love, but it is 3 Goliaths in a row now.
Of course.
And we go back to camp. And that's when this plan to get Dan out and have Goliaths be involved in it sort of starts to fall apart.
Well, we start with Kara presenting it to the Davids. Let's get the Davids involved, let them know that we're voting out Dan, but because he might have an idol, we're gonna split with Angelina. So getting them on board, and of course the Davids are like, yeah. And I'm sure deep down they would have loved to have believed this and gone along with it. But you know, this is the game of Survivor. So now as we unfold, Allison's the one who's like, is it time to get Dan out? Well, okay.
I really thought you were on board with this. But apparently not. So she and Alec are sort of having this conversation where they're like, oh, I'm just like changing my mind all the time. And Alec's like, me too, I totally get it. And like, they're sort of rationalizing it like, at least within the Goliaths, we know the pecking order. So we know that Dan is kind of on the bottom with Angelina. If we like go over to the Davids, it's like this whole new thing, and they're just getting cold feet with this plan to get Dan out. So then Kara comes over and she's like, hey guys, what are you talking about? And they're like, we don't want to get Dan out. And she's like, okay.
Her face was pretty great because she was like, are you kidding
Right,
me?
but she like got it together pretty quickly, which I was really glad to see. Like that was very smart for her to just go with the flow.
She didn't fuss or whatever. She was like, all right.
Right,
okay.
right. She didn't,
like we had originally said, we do Christian.
Yeah,
okay.
She didn't pull an Angelina like, well, I wish, you know, I could have been a part of that decision, like, you know, griping and moaning about it. She just went with it, which was great. Then it's just a little too segregated on that beach, right? And the Davids are noticing that all the Goliaths are over there talking. What could they be talking about?
So more are joining, you know? Then like Angelina's walking up and Dan's walking up. And of course the Davids are like, well, there we are again.
Yes, right.
They're just sitting there. Figuring out who they're gonna vote for.
Here we are in the minority again, and they just get to pick one of us off.
But
they hold a summit.
Yes, thank goodness. It makes them go, all right, brains together. Let's do
think about this, right?
Everyone reveals all advantages.
Yes, right.
Christian talks about his idol. Carl is so excited to talk about his nullifier.
Any chance he gets to talk about that thing, he will do it. He's so excited.
Yeah.
And Nick reveals the steal a vote advantage. So they're all it's a great segment where they're like all putting their nerdy brains together about like what's the best configuration of these advantages. And they're
excited. They're like, oh my gosh, we have 3 advantages.
How do we use this the best way?
Use this to our advantage.
Yeah, right, yeah. So they're trying to figure out, like, if we play the steal a vote and then we play this idol nullifier and but they never tell us, going into tribal, who their target is very clearly. We've seen Gabby working on this Dan situation with Allison, but things have changed at this point.
We're like, well, is Dan the target?
Right.
Like, they haven't told us really who the target is, and they haven't told us, of course, how they figured out how to use any of this.
Right.
But we know that they are all working together, so we feel good going into the tribal that something to the Davids' benefit is going to happen.
Absolutely. And we're thinking probably the steal a vote thing is like a given just because it's 6-5 and that changes the dynamic automatically.
Easy. Use the steal a vote.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But we go to the tribal council and it's a lot of talk about these tribal lines. Like they really have stayed remarkably strong. Like it is still very much David versus Goliath this season. And you know, the Davids are kind of moaning a little bit about like, well, the Goliaths are all talk and they say they want to work with us, but then the vote comes down and they're trying to get one of us out again. Yeah. You know, the Goliaths are sort of saying like, look, we just are like staying with what we know and what we trust.
They're like, you know, do I want to be on the bottom of a new group of people that I don't really know? Like, is that worth it? I mean, everyone's making valid points, but they're really talking about, you know, 2 tribes against each other versus blurring those lines. Yes. And I love that, like, no one hinted on the Davids side. There were a couple points that I thought, oh, they're gonna, and then throw down like or we'll see. Yeah. You know, there was none of that. Or like, and things change. Right. They didn't really hint at all. No. Or at least in the editing, we didn't see it. But, you know, when they call to go vote, Nick has to be like, well, first, let me share something with you.
Yeah, I've got a little advantage, and it's called steal a vote. And immediately Goliath's face falls, right? Right. Like, all of them are like, oh no, because they know one vote that switches sides changes the game. And he steals Allison's vote.
Now they go to vote.
Yes.
And they don't show us any names.
No.
And we are like, who is voting for who?
Yes. Who's the target?
Usually you see like the 2 names that we know are going to be written down one time. Right. No names.
But you see like the Goliaths are murmuring, and I think I could see in Allison's face, she thinks she's the target at this point because her vote has been stolen.
Sure, why would you steal her vote? What's going on? Oh, la, la, la.
Yeah, we see Dan kind of like, well, should I play my vote for Allison? And Kara, I think it's kind of like, no, like play it for yourself or something.
Like, save it for me.
Yeah, right. So they're just kind of like all antsy during this vote because they're all thinking one of us is effed and who is it?
We lost the numbers. Yeah, we didn't see those coming.
Right.
Now the votes come back.
Yes, and Jeff asks if anybody has an idol they want to play.
Beat. Pause. What?
No Christian, but then Dan.
Dan. And I'm like, oh my god, what?
Yeah.
Dan, why are you playing your idol? Well, he plays it for himself, not Allison.
No. Yep.
Plays it for himself, and I'm like, okay, smart.
Right.
If you're worried, play it. But I was like, you just lost both of your idols in 2 thing.
And people were like, I knew it. Like,
yeah.
The way this was edited was great, though.
So perfect.
Because Jeff's like, this is a hidden immunity idol, and this is an idol nullifier.
Bum, bum, bum. And now I'm standing and screaming and jumping and what?
And then he flips it around. This is played for Dan.
I mean,
then people are like, oh no.
This is the one that I was worried about. This is the one that's difficult to play.
Yes.
You have to know who to play it for.
Yes.
And it worked perfectly. Dan plays an idol. Dan has an idol nullifier. Woo!
Yes, right. So then they read the votes, and things get even more interesting in the vote reading.
Yes.
So there's 3 votes for Christian right off the bat, which we expected because we knew the Goliaths were on this mission to get Christian out.
Yeah.
Then we get 2 votes for Angelina. Okay.
Okay.
And then the rest are for Dan, and Dan's out.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah.
Good job, David.
Yes.
Wow. Goliaths are floored again.
Right.
They've lost another number.
Now it's even, 5-5.
Impressive.
Yes.
For the Davids.
2 weeks in a row, Davids have massively outsmarted the Goliaths. It's amazing to watch.
It worked out exactly however they had planned and orchestrated.
Right.
Now let's break this down. Because what?
Okay.
So the first question is, why did Nick steal Allison's vote?
Right. Because like Sarah was saying, if you're playing this idol nullifier, you need to know who the idol's going to be played for.
Yes.
So why would you not, if you're going to play it for Dan, why would you not steal Dan's vote and make him feel like he's going to be the target?
Then he definitely feels like the target. He's definitely playing the idol for himself.
Right.
The fact that they picked someone else, he almost potentially played that idol for that other person.
Yeah.
So what was it about Allison? Was there something they thought in her vote?
Right.
Is there something around camp that they don't trust her? Is it a warning sign of, girl, we were watching you?
We see you, right? Yeah. You said you were working with us, but you're clearly not.
Right. Like we said, it worked out, doesn't matter, but we just questioned, like, what, is there something more that I don't realize there?
Right. Then with the way these votes fall, it's interesting too, because at the end of the episode, we see who voted for whom, and clearly all the Davids voted for Dan unanimously. But
there's only 3 votes for Christian.
Right.
The other 2 votes from Goliaths are for another Goliath, Angelina.
Which, I mean, she's a perpetual vote getter, just like Christian at this point. Like every tribal they get, somebody votes for them. But it's just interesting that they would choose to do that, especially if they know that Dan has an idol and he might play it for himself. And so he might be safe.
Now, the 2 votes, we should say, were Alec
and Kara.
And so those 2 were involved in the other plan of splitting votes between Dan and Angelina.
Right.
So did they change course?
Right.
And say, with this vote steal, we lost the advantage. We should show the Davids that we were always on board with them.
Right, we're ready to vote out a Goliath.
Totally.
Yeah.
Was that a last minute change? I wonder.
Yeah, right. I will be interested to see how that comes together in the next episode, but we did get a little bit of preview where Allison was saying to Angelina that her name was a contingency plan. But I don't really even get that, because if it was a contingency plan, why wouldn't you split it with another David? So that you're ensuring that you get out another David.
Well, it was a contingency plan in that earlier plan. So when Kara and Allison talked to the Davids and said, Dan might play an idol, we'll throw Angelina's name down just in case. Yeah. So like they wanted Dan out, but she was gonna be the backup.
Right.
So that's what she's referring to.
Yeah.
So maybe editing wise, they never really flipped back to Christian.
Yeah.
Maybe that was just to mislead us.
Could be.
And Allison, Kara, and Alec were going to vote. But that doesn't make sense that the other 3 Christian voters...
Yeah.
Would they have not told them? Like,
I need to know what conversations happened behind the scenes leading up to this tribal on the Goliath side, because I don't get when things changed and who was involved in those decisions and anything on those lines. So interesting things happening there. And now Angelina realizes, okay, these people are not my friends.
Nope.
and she is on a warpath, it looks like, next week, which will be fun to watch.
And this is the perfect time for Angelina to work with the Davids and make some plans happen. And she can do it. She has shown us how well she can do it. You know, she's going to have to work at it because she's sort of worked herself down into this, like, role. Yeah. And so she's got some work ahead of her, but she can easily get, I just said work and easy. That didn't make sense. But she can, but she can do it. She can, she can come up with some stories.
She will.
And get those Davids on her side.
And look,
she now knows Goliaths don't care about her.
They don't have her back. And the reality is she's going to have to be a number for people for a few weeks, but you gotta start somewhere. Just, you know, align yourself and go along with votes and build trust that way, and then you can start to, like, maybe creep in and divide people and start to make moves again.
Right.
And, you know, who knows, maybe Alec and Kara are still somehow on the Davids' good side because they did cast these 2 votes for Angelina. Yeah. We'll see how that plays out, but
that's possible.
Now it's even Davids and Goliaths, and anything's possible now.
And Alec is looking pretty as far as I'm concerned. Like, he is working all angles. Yep. And no one has been talking about him as a possible threat or target.
No.
So that's interesting.
But now that Dan and John are out, I think Alec will sort of start to rise to the top of people's minds as this, like, insane physical threat, because he has been all season long.
Yes, that's true.
He's been so physical in all of the challenges. So people are going to start to notice.
Yeah. So he's definitely now going to need the Davids on his side. Yeah. You guys, another amazing episode. This season blows my mind.
It's amazing. Like, just seeing these Davids outplay the Goliaths at Tribal when it counts has been so awesome the past couple of weeks.
It really has been.
Yeah.
But now we're even, so what's gonna happen?
Anything.
Let us know what you thought about this Tribal, what all the things that the Davids did. I really wish that they only had used one, but they had to use the 2. That's the way it worked.
Yeah. And did you love Carl's bing as much as I did? Because I was living for that. That was amazing.
That was so good.
Let us know what you guys thought, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.